Hey BookTube! So today I thought I would just tell you about getting out of my 2-year reading slump. Basically, I didn't read anything at all in all of 2017 and a lot of 2016 as well. I'm sure some of you have been in similar situations as well. So I guess I just kind of wanted to share. I'll start off with saying that around 2015, like the end of 2015, I had such a good routine going. Like I've never had such a good sleeping schedule in my life. And best of all, I read basically every single night, and also for maybe like an hour or two when I first got up on a morning. Like, I was doing great. I had just discovered the Throne of Glass series and I read the first 2 novels, and then I moved on to the prequels. I don't blame these for what happened, but it certainly set off just like a massive chunk of me not reading. So basically, the Throne of Glass and the Crown of Midnight, I think, are the first 2 books in Sarah J Maas's the Throne of Glass series. Everybody else already knows them. I don't really think I have to explain much about them. If you've not read them, you've heard like 1,000 other people talk about them. And this book, The Assassin's Blade, is like a collection of like 5 little mini novella type stories that all like lead up to the start of the Throne of Glass, and you don't necessarily have to read them, but it's kind of intended for you to read them, I think, so that you understand like some things that might happen later throughout the series, or I think there are some characters in here that might come back in later series. I don't know, because I've only read the first 2 books of the Throne of Glass series so far, but that's the impression I get. So this, I was reading the books in publication order, so I'd read the Throne of Glass and then I'd read Crown of Midnight. And then I moved on to this because this was published between books 2 and 3. So I started reading it and just, oh my god, was it so freaking boring. I basically wanted to just read more about Selena and what was happening to her now, but I'd sort of been led to believe that I might miss out on vague references or something if I hadn't read this. And like, it's not a huge book, but it's not like a really small book either. This is the kind of book where if it was interesting, I could maybe get through it in like a day if I didn't have anything else to do. But alas, it was just such a change from the pace that I was used to, and I just couldn't stand her being like back at the beginning of this character arc. I didn't give a crap about anyone else in it, and I think I got about 50 pages through it before I just couldn't read anymore. It was just boring, I couldn't pay attention to it, and like, it's not a bad book, I'm sure. This is the first book on my TBR now, because I really do want to get through it and get back into the Throne of Glass series. But essentially, I kind of screwed myself over, because once I start reading a book, I don't like to DNF it, and especially because the next book that I wanted to read was another Throne of Glass novel. I really felt like I had to get through this first. I didn't want to move on to the next book and have not read this, because at what point was I supposed to read it? If not after the next book, then the next book, then the next book, and it's like, I can't get to the end of the series and then go back and read it. Like, it just wouldn't work. I'm really bad at just stopping doing something and like starting to do something else when it comes to something like reading, so I just couldn't move on to another book. It was like I had to read this because I'd started it and it was the series that I wanted to read, but I also didn't want to read this, so I just didn't read anything. So I ended up trying to fill my time with other things such as YouTube and other hobbies, and that sort of got in the way, and then I just couldn't think of anything else to read. These were just sat on my shelf waiting for me, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I also didn't want to buy any more books because I already had like the whole series to date purchased, so I think I have everything up to book 5, and I just couldn't bring myself to DNF the whole series, so I just sort of put everything on pause since like I want to say like January 2016 to early 2018, maybe like May 2018. Like, I had a huge reading slump, and I mean, I read bits of fan fiction, and you know, I read like little creepypasta type stories that passed across my Tumblr dash. I've read manga, which I know technically counts. Essentially, more or less, for over 2 years, I didn't read. And that's a huge sin for me, because reading is like a huge part of my, it's just a huge part of me. I love books, I love writing, I love reading, I love words, I love the English language, and I love fiction and fantasy, and I just completely abandoned that hobby because I was just kind of I was just stuck on this one stupid book. After like 2 years went by, I kind of got past the whole needing to read specifically this book. And I was watching a little bit of YouTube, and everyone was recommending this. This is Rainbow Rowell's Carry On, and I don't know, I might still do a review on this yet, but basically it was around like mid 2018, and I heard about this book and I really loved this cover, like it's beautiful. So I decided that I think because it was akin to fan fiction, just in the sort of really irreverent way that it's written, that you're kind of supposed to know the deal when you go into it. So I managed to pick this up, and I read this in about a day. I got it in the late afternoon, early evening, and then by mid-morning the day after that I had finished reading this. It was just that good, and I thought this was going to completely break me out of my reading slump. I was so thrilled to have just like completely devoured this book. I didn't think I was ready to move back onto the really boring Throne of Glass series just yet, so I instead moved on to another series that I hadn't continued, but that when I had read the first book in 2014 when it first came out, I'd read The Queen of the Tearling, and so I picked up book 2, The Invasion of the Tearling, and oh my god, books are out to sabotage me, because this book, again, I might do a review of this. I loved the first book. It was just really good. Like, I remember really enjoying reading it. This, I don't want to say it sucked, but it kind of did. And like, it's a big book as well, so again, this is maybe one that if I had nothing else to do and I'd really enjoyed it, I could have got through this in about 2 days. I think I read it over the course of like a week on and off, and there were some parts of it that I just was so bored. I didn't want to keep reading, and I made myself, but by the time I'd finished it, it felt like an accomplishment, and no book should ever feel like an accomplishment to read, honestly. Like, if it doesn't flow, if it doesn't come easy, if it's not entertaining and fun, if you're not pulled through the story, if you actually have to like really put in effort to finish a book, it's just not a good book for you. And this was not a good book for me. So after that, I was kind of in a slump, and I was kind of again like, ugh, I don't really know what I want to read now, because I thought I would really enjoy that, and I do have the third book. I did have the third book lined up, but after that I was just not ready to go into book 3 of the Tearling saga, or whatever it's called. So I decided to try a few other novels. I bought Truth Witch, which I put down after like, I think I got through maybe like the first chapter, and I was like, I'm not reading this right now. It was not as good as I thought it would be. I do want to give it another chance, but again, as far as my reading slump went, it was really not good to pick up a book and just not want to read it at all. I then tried, oh god, here it is. I then tried to read this. Now this is the book that the Witcher series of video games is based on, and I've not really heard booktubers talk about this, but then I don't know how big into gaming a lot of booktubers are. I decided to read this, and I started to love the tone and the way it was written. But I have a massive freaking problem with this book and the author, and I'm probably definitely going to do a chat about that sometime. But I kind of threw down this book in complete protest, like just, I absolutely wasn't about to continue reading it. I think I'd rather just play the games, which was really disappointing. And by then I'd purchased 2 new books and hadn't read either, and I really didn't have any more money to keep buying more books if I wasn't going to read them, so it was kind of a case of, you're gonna have to read something that's on your shelf, and I didn't want to do that. It brings us to December, and well, actually it brings us to November, and I still hadn't continued reading anything at this point. So although I do count my reading slump as breaking when I read Carry On and Invasion of the Tearling, I got into another little mini reading slump basically straight after, because I couldn't find anything else that I wanted to read. Yeah, so then that brings us to November, which was NaNoWriMo, and I'd already decided that I wanted to devote my entire November just to doing NaNoWriMo. There's a vlog of it up on my booktube channel here, and there's actually, if you don't want to watch like the massive long vlog, there's also a shorter version of it on my main channel as well. And I really enjoyed doing NaNoWriMo, and I loved watching other people's vlogs about them writing, and especially with it being Christmas time, like December and just winter in general is always a time when I feel very, very connected to books and reading and literature. I don't know whether it's just because people stay indoors so much more, and I don't know whether it's just because I'm used to being gifted books around Christmas time, so that I tend to associate winter time with getting new books and doing a lot of reading. But I was definitely just in this headspace of you know, I just really want to start reading again, especially because I've just done so much writing. So if you've seen my TBR video, you'll know I have picked this book up again, and I've started reading this book again, and now I am hopefully planning to finish off the Throne of Glass series. I've hauled several more books that I want to finish, and I want to finish basically all the other books that I mentioned that I didn't get around to reading or that I didn't finish, except for this one, because I'm not here for that. And essentially, you know, I've got a plan, I've got a TBR, and I've got a booktube channel now, which means that, you know, I have essentially a record of whether I keep up with things or not. And if anything gets made into a challenge for me, it kind of spurs me on a little bit. So hopefully booktube is going to encourage me to actually get through these books, and I'm feeling really good about it. You know, I really want to leave my stupid, really long reading slump behind, because I love reading so much, and I don't think it's fair that my stupid brain should keep me from doing something that I love, which is reading. So I want to do so much more reading. Screw the reading slump, I just want to get back into it. You know, that is the story of my shitty reading slump, and hopefully, you know, wish me luck, I'm gonna get completely away from that and back into a good routine of, you know, constantly reading and picking up new books. So yeah, that's it for this video. I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of this was, other than to explain, I guess, why I'm so far behind everyone else when it comes to booktube things. You know, there are so many great books that have come out over the past few years that I have just not read because I just haven't been reading. And, you know, it's not that I've been doing other things or like reading other things in place of that, I just haven't been reading at all. So I kind of suppose I just wanted to let you guys know that this is why I'm really far behind, and that I don't want to be behind anymore. I'm really determined to just catch up on all the amazing things that I've been missing out on over the past couple of years. So please feel free to leave me recommendations of your favourite books in the comment section down below that have maybe come out since like 2015. Once I get through this current TBR, I would like to do a big haul of a bunch of books that I've maybe been missing out on, especially like good fantasy books, because I know a lot of those have come out that I just haven't been keeping up with. So yeah, that's it for this video. And I'm gonna go maybe try giving this another read now. So I guess I'll see you later, guys. Bye!